How's it going, everyone? It's Hobby from One Stretch at 1000. Today is January 26, 2021, and today we're going to focus on potentially 3 snowstorms that could impact the United States or are currently impacting the United States. We have this one that could impact the Midwest and Northeast next week. We also have another snowstorm that could affect mainly the Mid-Atlantic states, bringing some snowfall to Virginia and North Carolina. And obviously, we're going to talk about this current snowstorm that's bringing heavy snow over the Midwest, and it's expected to move on to the Northeast. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by first taking a look at the potential snowstorm that could happen next week that could bring major snowfall to the Midwest and the Northeast. I want to give you guys this forecast first because it's likely the next could be the next big snowstorm, and for the most part I'm sure you guys pretty much know what to expect with this current snowstorm, so I'll get to it later. But for now, I'm gonna keep track of this snowstorm first. So you see that the GFS is taking a 994 millibars low pressure system moving through the United States, which is pretty strong for a winter storm in the United States. It's not the strongest storm in the world. However, it is enough to hold its own and bring major a high snowfall and rainfall rate to the Midwest and the Northeast. You see that, and it's not only that the millibar pressure is low, and the trough is quite strong. It's also packing a lot of heavy rain and heavier snow bands, which is dumping a decent amount of snow through the Midwest, and a large swath of snow affecting a large area of the Midwest, which extends from Minnesota as far south as the Ohio River Valley. And if we move a little bit forward, you see that snow eventually extends to the Northeast, and we see the heavier squall lines of snow move through the Northeast and the Midwest and through the Great Lakes. And it could be a major snowfall threat for the Northeast because we see those heavier snow squalls moving through the East Coast, and we're seeing a lot of thunderstorm activity just south of this trough. So it is definitely something we need to keep in mind. And the European also agrees with this, which further emphasizes the fact that there's at least going to be a low pressure that's going to move through the United States and could potentially bring major snowfall through the Midwest and the Northeast, and could be the next big snowstorm for a lot of you guys, which might be unfortunate for some who don't like snow, because in the Midwest you just got impacted by just an extremely major snowstorm, and to see another one pass through your area just will add insult to injury pretty much in the Midwest, in the places where you already experienced over a foot of snow in some areas like in Des Moines and Omaha, where driving conditions were just awful today, and it just snowed a ton in those areas. And it's expected to move on to the Northeast as well, which will eventually get impacted by this first current snowstorm that's currently impacting the Midwest. But what's also interesting is that not only are the European and the computer and the GFS models are taking the relatively strong low pressure system move through the United States, they're also at a pretty similar position. And in terms of where they put the snowfall in their scenarios, it's very similar, and the forecasted radar is very similar, because you see that both the GFS and the European model are agreeing that there's going to be a large extending band of snow pretty much starting from the southeast, and it'll go pretty much in a negative tilting direction rather than a positive tilting direction. And if you don't know what a negative tilt is, it's pretty much a tilt that points the top towards the left, unlike a positive tilt where the top of the line points to the right, or to the east, I should say. So and the GFS and the European model are both agreeing that there's going to be a long extending band of snow that pretty much points in the negative direction towards the west at the top of the snowfall band. And it's quite interesting because it gives us more confidence that this snowstorm is going to occur when they're both very similar. It's not like last snowstorm where even as late as only 4 days out, they were still all over the place, the GFS and the European model. But even though we're 5 days out with both the GFS and the European model with this potential snowstorm, they're very similar in the forecast. So as of right now, there's higher confidence than you'd expect for a storm that's 5 days out. However, again, I want to emphasize that for the most part, it's still highly uncertain. I just want to say that since the European and the GFS model are agreeing that they're going to be in very similar positions and strength 120 hours from now with a similar forecasted radar map, precipitation area use, there's higher confidence than you typically see for the average 5-day forecast, but that does not mean at all that the confidence is high that the storm will exactly move and maneuver and build up the exact same way, because there's still a lot of uncertainty when we're talking about storm 5 days out when it comes to track the strength and the snowfall accumulation, etc. So we just have to wait and see how how the computer models shift their forecast over the next several days, because shifts are definitely gonna happen with this storm, and we have to see if they maintain a relative amount of confidence over the next several days. However, as the forecast stands, if this forecast were correct, then this would be a downright major snowstorm for not only the Midwest but the Northeast as well. If we take a look at the forecasted snowfall from the GFS model, if this storm were to move if this storm were to build up in this exact fashion and move in this exact fashion, you see that you see an extending area of 8 to 12 inches of snow extending from Chicago down to Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Pennsylvania, the New York City metropolitan area, and even the Boston metro area, where you could see over 8 to 12 inches of snow from this storm if it were to move in this exact same fashion. And keep in mind, this is assuming 1 inch of rain equates 10 inches of snow, so it's probably lower than that. I'm sure the GFS is only measuring the snowfall that's falling out of the sky rather than the snowfall that's actually sticking on the ground and accumulating. So it might be maybe an inch lower than this, but even then, there's still a good area of over 8 inches of snow for a lot of the Northeast and the Midwest. The European also agrees with it as well, where if it were to take its exact forecasted path and strength, the European is also taking quite a major snowstorm for a lot of the Northeast as well as the Midwest at this point, where 120 hours from now, you see there's an extending band of, I would say, 3 to 6. Oh wait, no, this isn't all the way. I forgot to put it. So you see that in the Midwest, you see a large area of over 8 inches and some areas over a foot if this storm were to take place. And this extends to the Northeast, where almost over 8 inches, 6 inches is expected in some areas, especially closer to Buffalo. However, it's still 3 to 6 for the most part, but when you pretty much average it out between the GFS and the European, it's more likely that you're going to see more than 6 inches of snowfall if this storm were to move in the exact same fashion as the current computer models are forecasting, and that's still very uncertain. I'd say for the Midwest and Northeast, just keep watching, because this could potentially be major. And since both the computer models are leaning towards a major snowstorm, it's definitely something to at least watch. I wouldn't prepare yet because there's still a lot of days to forecast this. However, I will say with confidence that at least the low pressure will move through the eastern half of the United States and bring snow in some area. Where exactly and how much, that still has yet to be seen. What could change or what could increase or decrease the snowfall forecast really depends on the position of this low pressure system. Let's take a look at the radar for the GFS model. Again, it really all depends on how much cold air is going to be behind it. Like with every trough that's moving through the United States, because if there's just enough cold air behind it, then there's going to be a lot more unstable air and this storm will grow stronger. And also it'll help determine the position of this storm. We have to wait and see, and it really all depends on how strong the northwesterly winds are, because if they're stronger, then that means that jet stream will dip further southward. However, if they're weaker, that means it'll go down a lot less. So that would mean a weaker storm in that case. And we also have to keep in mind of this ridge where it positions itself, because if that ridge is a little bit more northward to the point where it doesn't bring as much cold air along the East Coast and the Midwest, that means that it will more likely be a rain threat for you guys who are closer to the southern portions of the Midwest and Northeast, and mainly be in the interior Northeast and an extreme northern Great Lakes threat. However, if that ridge were a little bit further south, then that would mean the snow would also shift further south to the point where it might affect those along the Ohio River Valley and the Mid-Atlantic states. So we just have to wait and see what will happen with this storm and how it maneuvers itself over the next several days, and how all the ridges and low pressures play out over the next several days. Now let's look at the other snowstorm, which we've also been talking about has a potential of developing, and it's the forecasted Midwest to even Southwest snowstorm that's expected to bring major snowfall to a lot of southwestern states right around Arizona and New Mexico and Utah, where you could experience heavy snowfall from this, especially in the higher elevations where it's a lot colder. However, it really gets interesting once this trough moves through the United States and hits the Mid-Atlantic. However, at this point, I'd say there's more confidence that this isn't going to be the major snowstorm that we were thinking had the possibility of happening, as it seems like both the computer models, the European and the GFS, have been pretty persistent on just bringing, I would say, mainly a minor snowstorm to the Mid-Atlantic, because there isn't going to be enough of a jet stream dip in the eastern half of the United States to steer this storm up northward. So as a result, even though it'll strengthen, it's going to move out to sea strengthening, and it won't really come close to the Northeast coast to really bring any major snowfall for you guys, or to really develop to the point where it'll bring major snowfall for you guys, because by the time it develops, it's going to be out to sea rather than along the East Coast, which obviously removes heavy snowfall potential all throughout the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic states. And also, there isn't going to be a ton of cold air with this as well to really strengthen it very rapidly right along the Mid-Atlantic coast, and also bring a lot of snow to maybe North Carolina or the more coastal regions of North Carolina and Virginia. So there isn't going to be a lot of snow expected even in that scenario. However, there could be some snow as the storm moves out to sea, headed into middle of Thursday. However, it's expected to move out to sea without bringing, I would say, any major snowfall threat to the Northeast. There's still that possibility. Maybe it can move a little bit more northward and maybe affect more of the very extreme coastal portions of the Northeast, like Cape Cod and Long Island, with some snow. However, I think the chances of a major snowstorm coming out of this that will impact the entire Northeast are becoming slim to none at this point, as I mainly expect some snow in the Mid-Atlantic states, up to 3 to 6 inches in some areas, which still might be a lot for some. So in the Mid-Atlantic, I would definitely keep that in mind. And as for the Southwest, you guys, especially in the higher elevations and just northwest of Phoenix, you guys need to be watching, because it could dump over a foot of snow in some areas. Let's take a look at the current forecasted snowfall accumulation that's from the GFS, and you see that snow builds up. We see the darker purples, which represent over 8 inches of snow just northwest of Phoenix, Arizona, and we see a lot of snow pretty much bordering or right over Las Vegas, Nevada. So there's a lot of snow extending all throughout this region, and mainly 3 to 6 for the most part. However, in the higher elevations of Arizona and extending to Silver City, New Mexico, you could see over 8 inches of snow. So that's major for a lot of you guys. And along the west coast, like the higher elevations of California, you could see over a foot of snow from this, as the darker greens represent over a foot of snow, and even darker than that, up to over 2 feet in some areas in the upper elevation, in the higher elevations of California. So watch out for that, as it might be a good skiing weekend for you guys headed into this weekend for California. So keep that in mind if you're right along California. And as what the GFS model is saying at this point, it isn't expecting much of a major snowfall threat from this storm either, as it seems like the European is again leaning more towards bringing mainly a minor snowstorm to Mid-Atlantic, and maybe some snow in and around Phoenix, where over a foot is expected in the higher elevations in the European model. However, you see that based off of what the European model is saying 78 hours from now, this excludes the potential snowstorm I was talking to you about. The European isn't expecting much snow from this at all. Maybe 3 inches at the most. Compare that to GFS, where again it's taking around 4 inches at the most. So maybe an area of 3 to 6 inches throughout Virginia. I would say more of the western portions of Virginia, and obviously West Virginia and the higher elevations of North Carolina could experience some snow from this, and maybe the coastal regions of North Carolina might get an inch if they're lucky, but I would say the chances are less likely, since there's just going to be too much warm air along the coast to allow much snowfall to fall from this storm. So I see this storm unlikely to really impact much of to really bring the major impacts along the coast. Now let's move on to this current snowstorm that we've been tracking for pretty much the past week at this point, and you see that it's bringing heavy snowfall to a lot of the Midwest states. However, by the time you're watching this video, right around let me move on to the Futurecast radar so you guys could get the better picture of what the radar is going to look like by the time you guys are watching this video, because it's definitely going to have some drastic changes. So by around 1 p.m. you're going to see that the snow is extending all throughout the upstate New York, and this extends to Michigan, and the snow showers should be ending in Chicago. Pretty much the worst of the storm should be ending, I would say, early Tuesday morning, where the heavy snowfall bands will be far to the north and east of you guys. However, it's just beginning for a lot of New Jersey and the Pocono Mountain region in Pennsylvania, where you see the heavy snowfall rates extend through New York, Pennsylvania, and this will extend to New England a little bit later in the afternoon, where you could see even heavier snow in that region. And it's going to be heavier mainly because it's going to be a little bit colder. You guys are going to be in the snowfall for a little bit longer. Because of that, the snow swath will be larger as you head further north, because the snow pressure is expected to take a more northward track than initially expected. So those that were in the snow in northern New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York City metropolitan region will soon get out of it eventually, because the slow pressure is going to move further up northward, and as a result filter in more warm air to the point where it's going to be more of a mix or a rain event for New York City and New Jersey and the metropolitan region. However, for Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, it'll be more of an off snow event. However, the snowfall will still mainly be light, because the storm is going to lose a lot of its potent energy with it. It's going to lose a lot of its strength, because there's just not going to be enough instability to really get this storm going and maintaining its strength as it heads to the northeast. So don't really expect much more than maybe 3 to 6 inches of snow in New England. So you see that the 3 to 6 inch snow category extends to New England. This is the same map pretty much I used from yesterday, but no major changes have occurred in terms of what the computer models are saying. So So I didn't change it at all pretty much because of that. And you see that still 3 to 6 inches are expected throughout the interior portions of Pennsylvania, includes the Poconos, upstate New York, as well as a lot of New England. So I would prepare for 3 to 6 inches of snow. And for the time being in Chicago and a lot of Michigan, I would stay indoors for Tuesday morning because it's going to just be very rough, the conditions for you guys. Even though the storm is weakening, it's still going to be very it's still going to dump a lot of snow in a relatively fast pace. Not as fast as, let's say, what we saw in the Midwest, where over a foot was reported in some areas, but we will at least see some snow squalls bring heavier amounts of snow and a faster snowfall rate for you guys. So definitely keep that in mind if you're in the Northeast, because some roads could be slick. It isn't major, but at least definitely keep in mind. And also keep in mind this potential next week's snowstorm that could impact the Midwest and the Northeast, as well as the second snowstorm I've been talking to you guys about, where maybe some snow is possible in Mid-Atlantic, but I think the chances are of a major snowstorm throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are slim now, since both the computer models haven't really been changing their forecast much to really have the confidence to change the forecast much more than what it is, especially when we're 3 days out pretty much. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.